I thought we had someone for sure, so.
Yeah. Okay, so I'd like to call to order the Wednesday, November 8th regular meeting of the Nelson Police Board. We'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa, the Syilx, and the Sinixt people, and is home to the Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honor their connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. And if we could have a motion to accept the consent agenda as circulated.
Yeah.
Moved, seconded. There's anything that anybody wanted to have pulled out of that? We're all okay? No issues? All those in favor? Okay, so that's items 2A through D. There are nobody's here to give a presentation. Public participation, I think I'll waive reading this paragraph since we have no one in the room to participate in the public participation. And we're on to business arising, which I didn't see any here. So we are on to the Chief Constable's report. And the recommendation is that the Nelson Police Board receives and accept the Chief Constable's report as presented. And do you have anything further that you wanted to add to your report?
Not in the open meeting.
Okay, and does anybody have any questions of the report that they read?
That is no report.
There is no report.
Wasn't there a report there?
No.
Okay, I must have been reading the in-camera report. Okay. Perfect. And we're not receiving anything.
No report.
Wow. Moving right on into the
No
really
report
good
from
stuff.
me either, yeah.
We're going to move into the financial committee update and the provincial and the provisional budget.
Probably put that up on the board. Partly because I thought I was going to be able to have all this electronically and nothing's working, so. Anyways, about a month ago, we started a meeting with the city, Chris and Amy, CFO and the deputy CFO, just to go over our budget, basically looking at where we were at last year, where we need to look at increasing some of the budget amounts for 2024. Chris came and did a bit of a presentation to the budget committee last week. I'm just trying to remember what day it was.
Last Wednesday.
Last Wednesday, okay. The significant ask in the budget this year is going to revolve around 2 additional police officers. We're still, our stats continue to increase, the file loads continue to increase. The issues we run into is the file loads per member. We still have some shortages, but a lot of the shortages now we're getting to a stage are going to be repetitive shortages that we need to plan for every year going forward. So the annual leave that members are not getting to take, so they're carrying forward and their leaves are building up. So at some point it becomes a significant liability to the city, either when they retire or at some point they have to take 6 months off to use all their leave up. As well, the ADOs that they earn because they work more than the allotted hours in a given year, just because we have to have 24-hour coverage. So they get days in lieu off for that. And the stats, obviously we can't close on stats, so officers also earn some leave there. So we're paying out a significant amount of leave at the end of every year, mostly for ADOs and stats. Some on annual leave, but that's pretty inconsistent, so I couldn't get a good number on that. And we're paying over $200,000 a year in overtime. So, and that's directly related to, we can't keep minimal moves on, like we have minimums that we've set based on workload and file load and officer safety. So we have to maintain those regardless of whether there's people working. So quite often we have to call people in on overtime to cover those. That's quite difficult. A few times this past year, we've had to order people to come in and work. So they call them back from their leave. So now they lose their leave and they have to come back in and work, and we're paying them overtime on top of stuff. So it's just a bad situation all around. So we're still calculated. A couple of years ago, we felt we needed 24 officers in the department. Based on the numbers we're at right now, we need 25 officers in the department. Obviously, that's an increase of 4 officers, which we don't expect is going to be reasonable to ask for all in 1 year. So we are looking to increase by 4 over the next 3 years, but we're asking two additional officers this year on a staggered start. So we won't have the full impact of them this year, but by the summer, we'll have those 2 additional officers, or hopefully should have those 2 additional officers in place. And the summer months are the busiest time of year, and that's when most people want to take their leave. So we try to find that balance of enough coverage, but allow people the time off. I spent what version 3 or version 4 of the budget itself. I did want to ask, I was a little unclear on what you expect for tonight's meeting. The presentation I'm going to give to City Council, or just the budget? Typically, it's just the budget numbers itself.
Well, considering that, I mean, I don't know whether or not.
Basically.
Yeah. It's really what your choice is and what the committee here wants. I mean, will somebody, like, sometimes somebody comes with you from the board, but sometimes the board isn't all there. So I think the board should probably get to hear what the presentation will be to City Council. I mean, what's everybody's, I mean, 3 of the 4 of you were at all these meetings.
Yeah, the 3 of us were at the meeting last week, Jane and Devin and I, and we were prepared to make a recommendation to the full board to accept, but I would actually like to hear how you're going to frame it for the City Council.
And then I guess my question there is, this is being open to the public's getting the presentation before I give it to City Council, and I'm not sure
That makes no difference. I mean, the community charter is quite clear on budgetary meetings need to be held in the public. It's not
Confidential.
It's not confidential. This is all about transparency and accountability. All of our budget meetings are held in open, no matter what stage they're at. So,
okay.
I may have to run down and grab my laptop then, because I can't get anything to open on this iPad, and it's got my speaking notes and stuff in it. So you can take a 2-minute adjournment.
sure,
No problem. When is the presentation? Do you have
So
a?
we'll be having a special, it'll be a special meeting because it's coming to our cow at the end of the month. So it's the 22nd. Is that a Tuesday?
21st.
21st.
Okay.
It'll be at that meeting, and I haven't approved the agenda yet for it. It could be, I guess it'll maybe be at 4 or 4:30. Like, it could be before our dinner break.
Okay. I'll calendar that for sure.
I'll confirm the time.
I don't approve that agenda till next week.
Sorry, just for clarification, did the chief say the annual leave payouts was somewhat hard to quantify, but there was a number in there, right?
You did say that, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So best estimate at that.
Thank you. That's good.
The first. Oh, shoot. You think 4:30?
Yeah, I think that because we have to have a special meeting for this, that I think it'll be at the front end of the meeting as opposed to after the dinner break.
Okay, because I have a library board meeting from 6:30, so if it's not early, I can't make it.
Yeah, I guess it'll be at the, I do really think it'll be at the beginning, but like I say, I don't. Sarah's not in tomorrow. On Friday, I could probably ask her and at least tell you when that is.
That'd be great if that's at all possible, because I'd like to support the chief, but might be a conflict.
Yeah, my guess is it'll be at the front end because usually starting at 7, we have the delegations of people that want to come in and.
Sorry, what time does that actually mean? Front end, roughly?
I think it'll be between 4 and 6, is my guess. Kyla, have we heard anything back about any new members?
Nothing.
I was going to actually email the woman that organized the interviews I was involved in. I know that she wouldn't give me names or anything, but just to ask if they've made a recommendation.
Right.
Have they actually
Oh,
put
okay, you
forward names?
participated in interviewing the people that the province has that could be potentially on the.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll do that tomorrow. I'll let everybody know at least that they've put some names forward, and then they're just waiting now for the legislative
Right.
side of it. But those were for the new positions, right?
Yeah,
I suggested to them that if they've got enough applicants that they already assume that one of them will eventually fill my slot.
right.
Because if they wait another couple of months, then they're not going to have anyone by the
Did
time
you
I'm
have an
done.
official date that you're no longer with
It's
us?
March. I can't remember. It's March
Okay.
5th or something like
Okay.
that. Yeah. I did look at my paperwork a few weeks back, but I forgot.
Hey, can you make a note for the cake for March?
Yay, cake.
You get cake when you retire from.
I'm always in favor of cake.
Well, something besides an orange. I mean, we have to have something a bit more decadent. than that.
Yeah.
We'll go for dinner.
That would be nice.
And then there will be, yes.
Yeah, then we'll eat cake.
Where did he go?
He might have built himself a computer.
He went right to the port.
Oh, this really leans back. Yeah, if you folks have a chance tomorrow night, I highly recommend Killers of the Flower Moon.
That was last night?
I went last night.
No, is that the last night?
Tomorrow is the last night. Yeah, we just had to have it for a week.
Yeah, I saw Pat Henman's review. Did you see her comment on it?
No,
Yeah, she said that it was one of the best films she's ever seen.
Oh.
yeah, it was incredible. It was like, I mean, 3.5 hours is a long time. You know, my knee started to hurt and stuff like, but in terms of actually, like I went to the washroom twice and I like rushed back
To not miss
to
anything.
not miss anything. Like it was, and often I get, chatting with the floor lead or whatever, like, I was like, no, I gotta go. Yeah, it was good. The sound was incredible. Like there's this one scene where it like starts pouring rain I was
No
like,
wonder for 3
and I thought it was raining outside.
Me
Like
too.
I was like, it was like really, it was incredible. Like the sound was like just coming from all over. Like it was, yeah, it was beautiful and hard. It was hard to watch. Like it's not, it's based on a true story, and
Not a nice story.
and it's not a nice story. But yeah, it was so well done, and Martin Scorsese at the beginning talks about how he like worked really closely with the Osage Nation to make sure that it was like historically
Correct.
accurate and like I was really impressed with it, and normally 3.5 hour movies I'm not down. I was laughing about like Avatar, for example. I maybe watched 90 minutes of that 3 hour and 10-minute movie. Like I was like out chatting in the lobby, like just not like skip the last 45 minutes. That was really incredible. So.
Do you happen to know if that's the official pronunciation? Because I've always assumed,
Yeah.
and believe me, it's an assumption, that it was Osage.
I could have said it wrong.
Like a long A.
Yeah. Could be. I could have said it wrong. Let's go like this.
I don't actually know the answer, but I'm curious.
Pronunciation.
Osage.
There you go.
I remember reading about them in 5th grade.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Not that particular story, just the fact that they existed.
Yeah.
I don't mean to appear overly relaxed. It's just this chair. I've tried several times.
Yeah.
I'm losing the battle.
Yeah. I understand. I was like, I kind of want to lean back a little bit, but this is what
I'm
it's
trying to look more alert, but actually I'm falling asleep.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, we're giving up on that, so turn it off, turn it on. A bunch of things to try and reconnect.
Maybe Raj, just send him a note and tell him to come back and just present. I mean, that's,
Just a little quick summary. I was the only one who wasn't there.
Thrown him off his.
yeah, it's
Now
unfortunate that.
Shiloh's lost in the vortex too.
Well, it's unfortunate that the previous chair didn't realize that budget meeting should be an open to start with, so that's yeah, bit of a faux pas.
Yeah.
You done running training?
Yeah.
Okay. It was my fault.
Yeah,
I'm glad you did it.
yeah, I mean, it's a lot, but it's good. I mean, it just kind of brings home the complexity of the role, but given a lot of really good resources and tools and a lot of really good discussions, great to connect with other board members across the province.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Good.
And everybody's facing the exact same issues,
Yeah.
from the things as relatively trivial as how do we organize the agendas for our meetings?
Yeah,
To, how do we make decisions in this kind of circumstance?
Yeah.
Yeah, I found it really good.
Did you do it beforehand or were you doing this?
I did it before.
Yeah.
Lena and Devin did it first, and then I did it, and then Jane did it.
Okay.
So
I
it's
did
all
with
at separate
Shiloh.
times.
So everybody's done it, which is really great. We're probably one of the few boards that have all of the board members have completed it.
Mhm.
Because it is a bit of a,
I
I mean,
Commitment.
It's
It is
like,
3 times I looked there and I thought, oh, that's the one. And I went, no, that's not the one. Because you have to attend, you have to have that availability for those.
and now it's
Four.
time for the next level, right? They've got another
Yeah.
Foundations 2 coming or something like that?
Those days where some computers are gonna go through some windows pretty soon.
Yeah, Chief, just,
Wing it.
wing
Sorry
it.
about that. Well, it's a public
I'll just go sit
meeting.
up there. Because I can,
Peer over Shiloh's.
Do you want to trade spots? Like easier for you to see from?
yeah. Let the spinning wheel on that. And I emailed it to myself so I could read it off there too. Okay, so this is the presentation we'll be giving as far as the 2024 budget presentation. So include our mission, vision, values. I think you're all aware of those. The next one. No, let's do it. The Nelson Police Department is mission to provide professional, trusted, and sustained policing while preventing crime, preserving the peace, and protecting lives, property to improve the quality of life in our community. So again, just as some of the stuff we brought forward from last year, just showing the workload per 100,000 population of the department. The only department when you bring it into comparable numbers, so charges laid is the blue columns and calls for service is the orange columns. The first group is Victoria, first department is Victoria. The second department is Nelson. So on a per capita basis, we're the second busiest department in the province. The next one beside it, which I can't see because of whatever's on there, but that would be Vancouver, and then it goes down to Hope Bay and Central Saanich. I think I put on there just because they're a comparable size, but you can see the difference in call volume and charges.
So are you reflecting that we have the same amount of crime as Vancouver? Is that what that's telling me? Or,
It's telling you we have the same
Calls.
number of,
You have the
Calls.
same number of calls, not
Charges.
crimes.
but it's not necessarily. So then you get into crime severity index, which is coming up, but
okay,
that's the seriousness of the crimes.
okay,
So, a call for somebody causing a disturbance downtown wouldn't be the same as a stabbing downtown.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
again, this
So it's just the
this is
calls.
call volume.
It's just a call volume.
Per capita, too. It's not.
But charges still, I mean, you still got to do RTCCs and get the charge approval and all that stuff. So, and just a similar graph, but this just shows the charges. Victoria's first, Nelson second, and Vancouver third. And then towards the bottom, I couldn't pull every department on here, but then for comparison, Hope Bay and Central Saanich. So definitely they are similar sized communities and probably somewhat similar crime types, although I think we deal with a little bit more of that, the decrim issues and the disturbances and the mental health issues and minor assaults and threats.
Especially the Oak Bay, right?
I was gonna say,
Like-
open it, barking dogs or.
So crime, criminal code, the clearance rates. So this is out of the complaints we get in the investigations. We start how many of them we actually clear by way of, there's an outcome where we've determined what happened and who's responsible. Now the clearance may be restorative justice, it may be alternate measures, it may be we could charge somebody but decided not to, or obviously we charged them. So the clearance rates for BC, and this slide was in there last year, but I've updated the numbers. So this year, the average across BC is just over 25%. Nelson Municipal is just under 40%, and we've gone up about almost 2% clearance rate from what we were at last year. So we had a little bit of a trend down sort of through the COVID years and starting to trend back up. And obviously that's a good thing. We'd like to get the numbers up, as high as possible. But I think a realistic target is to get about 50%. So that's kind of where we're aiming for the next couple of years. Trail isn't too far behind us. The Trail RCMP detachment has a clearance rate of about 35%. But then the majority of the other departments of similar size or throughout the area all around that 20 to 25%. So we do reasonably well for clearance rates being close to 40%.
Even shorthanded.
Yes. This slide I think is impactful. So last year there was 6,366 calls for service. Obviously we're only 10 months through the year for our stats, but even to the end of October, we were only 98 calls behind what we were for the whole year last year. So if I extrapolate, and again, it's just extrapolation, we're at 7,427 calls by the end of the year, which is a 17% increase over the previous year. So our background, the department currently has an authorized strength of 21 police officers. The city population is 11,467. Just for the record, I looked in 2 or 3 different spots and got different numbers in every one, but this was actually the lowest. So just went with that. Crime rate of 67, which is the second highest in the province.
67 what?
Yeah.
Yeah, around.
100,000?
Sorry, and I meant to get the definition of that to put in my speaking notes, and I don't think I did. It's a calls per population, but I don't know what the number is off the top of my head, so I don't know if that's 67.
Per 100,000 or?
Sorry, chief.
That seems low, though. I think it's like 67 per thousand.
Mhm.
Well, sorry, I don't have that number for the actual presentation.
And what do we consider a crime there? Is that vandalism or?
Not all calls result in crimes.
No, not all calls are for crimes, so it would have to be a criminal code, reported criminal code offense. So over 7,000 calls per year we're at now, and the caseload per officer is second highest in BC. So that's the, just leave them on the screen. Or just, that makes the slides smaller, so you guys probably can't see them. That's good. So we're the second highest with 43. Nothing's working today. 43 cases per officer. Victoria is the highest with 49, and the average of all police departments in BC, and that includes our St. Pete attachments, is 33. So Nelson's 25% higher than the average caseload per officer.
Is that per year?
Yeah, it's calculated annually based on crime stats, file loads. There's quite a few things that go into it. CSI then calculates based on the seriousness of the calls. They calculate some other numbers. But so increased call volume, increased CSI.
It's a crime severity index.
Yes, and again, I think it was in my speaking notes, but the crime severity index, for Nelson went up slightly this past year, but they also do a crime severity index for violent crimes, and I think that was up over 40% this year from last year. Now, I think there's a lot of tie to things that were happening in the community this past year. Some of the stuff tied to Clubhouse, the decrim pieces, some of the assaults or violent crimes could be minor. They could be threats, which are considered violence. So threatened violence against somebody is considered a violent crime, which contributes to the heavy workload. Again, those types of files take more work to investigate, but they also take quite a bit more work to prepare charge approval to the Crown and your court disclosure documents and things. So the community effect, police department in British Columbia must be capable of providing 5 overarching functions to the community to meet acceptable standards of competency. So responding to calls for service, proactive policing strategies, so impaired driving, proactive work, different traffic things. We've got some proactive items going on right now. Intelligence-led policing, strategic policing priorities, so being able to follow the board's strategic plan and meet those goals, and the city council's priorities. And the final one is the provincial policing standards, which are set in Victoria, and that revolves around police training standards and investigative standards in particular. So we have to be able to meet those requirements. The next two slides are a little bit wordy, but I think they're important. And the Peter Lapine report does go back to 2015, but I think it still speaks to some of the information that was in the report that's relevant today. So it's reported that the population of Nelson increases by an additional 50% during the daytime hours, as the city of Nelson is the largest community in the region, which draws many people for work, community services, and recreation. This phenomenon is often referred to by both council and the NPD as core city phenomenon. So within any policing organization, appropriate resources must be available to accommodate gaps that are created from absences due to annual leave, sickness, parental leave, training, and court attendance. Some studies have indicated that absences due to these events place significant pressure just to protect the status quo, so maintain a minimum number of officers working when it comes to current service delivery. It would appear that in the case of the Nelson Police Department, there is very little, if any, capacity to bridge this gap based on their current authorized strength.
That was 2015, and it's just as true today.
Yes. It is getting better. We obviously increased the numbers some, so that's certainly helped, but we're still not caught up because the workload and the demands on the department have increased over that time as well. So we're still sort of lagging behind where we should be at. Okay. A couple of quick stats on the Canadian Institute for Public Safety and Research Treatment indicate that 45% of first responders in Canada have symptoms consisting with at least one mental health disorder. So again, sometimes that's alarming, and I mean, I guess it is alarming, but there's a fairly wide spectrum of mental health disorders from, stress, anxiety, depression, all the way up to PTSD is kind of the big one, and everybody assumes that if it's a mental health disorder and you're a first responder, you must have PTSD, which isn't always the case, but none of it's good and none of it's a good thing. So this value is approximately 4 times higher than the general population. 1/3 of first responders in Canada have thoughts of suicide, which is double the rate of the general population. And occupational stress is inherent to public safety work, largely due to repetitive exposure to traumatic events, burnout, and compassion fatigue. So a couple things that the department is working on just to deal with these issues and keep a healthy workforce and keep people at work. So we're trying to reduce the sick hours that we're paying out, but we have enhanced PTSD awareness and education. We have a peer support team, employee and family assistance program. We have, and you might remember this from last year, has Guardian been up for a year now, Raj, or close to a year? So employee monitoring through Guardian. So there's some automatic flags that the system keeps track of and lets us know if, because sometimes I might know or deal with a traumatic event or an issue that somebody has had, and I know about that, and Roger Chris might deal with them or with something else, or one of the sergeants might. So between all of us, we don't always know what that one officer has been exposed to. But by putting those things onto Guardian, it keeps track of it and it sends us a flag to say, hey, maybe you should check in with this officer. Just make sure that things are okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that there is a problem, but it at least gives us an early signal that it's something that we should probably, as I said, check in with them, do a little bit of follow-up, just make sure that things aren't going off the rails. You typically find, apart from being exposed to traumatic things, they're oftentimes become misconduct issues, there become performance issues, driving issues where they're involved in accidents and things like those are all flags that maybe there's something underlying. Critical incident stress debriefing. So we're trying to be more diligent at doing those after every kind of traumatic or stressful event. Improved extended healthcare benefits as per the collective agreement, which we're still working towards, but I think those are important for people to take care of themselves both mentally and physically when they're away from the department. So with the ability to maintain a right-sized and efficient workforce, it allows us to further support physical and mental health through the ability to balance and reduce officers' workloads, structure a better work-life balance, including time to actually use their allotted leave. So again, we been struggling since I've been here to have people even probably get half of their allotted leaves. And this reduces the risk of staff shortages caused by stress and fatigue.
Chief, just for clarification, because this is a public meeting, can you define like your annual leave? Because not everybody might be familiar with that term. So it's
So the officers, and it's somewhat based on seniority, but the officers are given so many hours per year that they can take as vacation time. So they're given the vacation time, but we can't afford to have them off to take their vacation time. And as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, we've had, well, too many, but several times over this past year where people were on their leave and we had to call them and order them back to work because there was just nobody to cover a shift. Good. Maybe just go back one. I wasn't.
Okay.
I got that one. Yes. So although improving, our department remains in a response-oriented model of policing for the most part. So a call comes in and we respond to it. With the ability to maintain a right-sized and efficient workforce, it also allows us to provide better service delivery through better trained officers with the skills and time to conduct thorough investigations. So again, just to jump in and comment on that, a lot of the challenges we have is we have to send officers on the mandatory training, but that's really, for the most part, all we have the ability to send them on. So as different investigational techniques are developed in policing and those skills that they need to conduct those proper investigations and the, again, more complex technical investigations, especially things around computer crimes, frauds, those take a little bit more specialized training. We just haven't had the ability to keep up with the trends in society. So that's another thing that we're working towards, getting officers on some of these, not mandatory, and I don't even want to call it nice to have because I still think it's essential to have training. People are being victimized and we don't have the capacity or the skills in some cases to investigate them. Focus on proactive intelligence-based policing strategies, crime prevention education, the ability to meet policing and strategic standards and reduce staff stress and fatigue. So crime prevention education is one of the things that we're working towards utilizing the CSOs for some, but again, I think as a police department, we need some police officers that have the time and ability to work on some crime prevention education strategies throughout the community as well. So some of the increased demands around policing service standards. So there's always new mandatory courses and training coming up. So again, we're tied to the mandatory training, which is good, but it takes up pretty much the capacity we have to send officers away on training. So MCM, that's major case management, and it's a structure and a process that sets up a given number of officers with specific roles in the major case management strategies to ensure that proper investigations are conducted and people that have specific roles are doing those roles. But the standards and requirements for these types of investigations around sexualized crimes, missing persons, intimate partner violence, and obviously more serious ones like homicide and that require us to operate through the MCM standards. So there's 3 basic key investigative roles within major case management and then a team commander on top of it. So essentially you got 4 people committed to that, and 3 that should almost be their full-time investigation is that one file. So this requires extra dedication as well as requires extra and dedicated police resources. Sorry. Do you want to comment anything on the MCM piece?
Yeah, sure, happily. These are, as the chief said, like there are certain crime types that were mandated to utilize MCM on. So there's no choice with that, right? So the chief hit it off, like it's actually, it requires a lot of resources. That's the world that I came from Victoria, as well as the deputy and the chief as well. So we're very well versed in what it takes. And we all have a lot of experience to know It's resource intense, as well as the training that, so you have to be, in order to fill one of these roles, you have to have the standards, you have to have a training course that's recognized by the province, which are hard to come by. You have to have experience and you have to have approval by your chief. So the experience piece is difficult, the training piece is difficult, and the people piece is very, very difficult. So it's a big ask for our small organization.
And how frequent is it?
So I'd say more frequent. So what we're seeing is there are particular crimes that are listed that we are mandated to investigate under major case management methodology. But I'd say more and more with the new Crown Police Memorandum of Understanding, electronic disclosure, there's more of a lean towards using major case management principles in our disclosure process. So that's sort of where we're going in terms of
So it's applied to more types of
cases. Yeah, than would just
Even
be
the mandated ones.
Yeah, so there's mandated ones, but within the mandated ones, there's also any other case that would essentially be exceptional disclosure. And so that really comes down to a question to Crown: what do you perceive as being exceptional disclosure? And because all of our investigations have really become more and more complex in general, well, the question about exceptional disclosure can really apply to far more cases. And so I can tell you, in my role, I was a senior officer per the major case management standards who oversaw all major case management in Victoria. A lot of the cases we investigated weren't part of that listed
the mandated
crimes. Yeah. But because of their complexity in general, we always went that way with major case management. Yeah.
It's just better structure, and it results in a much better investigation and disclosure. And ultimately, I always like to say disclosure is our product. That's what we ultimately are here to produce. That goes to the Crown so that they can do their job and either successfully deal with or prosecute those cases. And if we don't do it properly, it opens the department and the members up to a significant amount of risk through negligent investigations and possible lawsuits or other things. So, really it's risk management on top of everything else, and it ensures that proper investigations are done. Roger, do you want to add anything on that? Oh, okay. So, and then the last piece, just increasing demand that we've all seen, and I want to be careful not to sort of paint anybody with a negative brush or anything, but mental health issues, addictions, unhoused, and the decriminalization of street drugs has also certainly increased the calls for service for the police. And there is other resources that are being looked at and developed to help support us in that, in the role of going to those calls. People that have the expertise and those should be dealing with it, but they're always going to be unpredictable calls, and there's always a certain level of risk to those that police will always be attending. We just hope we have the resources assigned to us that can deal with the issue at hand while we provide oversight and safety to it. Increased need for supervision in response to new Crown and police MOUs. So Chris had mentioned that, but the electronic information management and the disclosure workflow guidelines, which for lack of a better term again, but I would also say are being mandated to police to follow and use that system for information management and disclosure. It is a bit more work intense and front end on the police, but again, I think it just provides a better product and a more successful clearance rate for the police, along with in the cases where it's required, you want to see a successful prosecution. So you want to see justice done. Much higher need for oversight and supervision on our investigations in order to have success with charge approval and Crown. So that's why we've started looking at the corporal rank, partly for development of people to be supervisors and senior supervisors down the road, but also the number, as I explained in the email, the supervisor to officer ratio is fairly high. Not just in this department, but in a lot of departments. And Chris had mentioned that Victoria is certainly one of the departments looking at going to smaller teams with, a smaller ratio of supervisor to employee, just to ensure that that proper supervision oversight is being given. So that's a trend that's across policing. And again, for the reasons explained, just the complexity and requirements placed on police now, somebody needs to be checking that those are being followed and done properly. So increased external requests, so freedom of information requests, stats through a number of different federal, provincial government agencies that we're always providing, and a request from the BC Human Rights are probably our biggest draw on stat requests. Some externally funded programs and services that the department offers. So this is where we've got most or all of the funding at this time is outside of the budget we had. 24/7 service call response and dispatching services. I'm sure that one should be on there. Okay, sorry. Community Safety Officer Pilot Program. So the 2 CSOs we've gotten separate funding for, supplemented some by the department, and discussion that there will be funding from the province or other sources in the coming year. We just unfortunately at this point don't have when we will get that and exactly what it'll be. So it's a little hard to gauge how much will be, we will have to supplement as a department. The Integrated Regional Victim Services Program, and we met with them today. They've got a lot of good initiatives going on and are covering off a lot of the detachments in the surrounding areas as well, assisting for various reasons. Regional Detention and Remand Facility, something we've been doing. We haven't been mandated to do, and we're looking at ways to improve that. So maybe a little better funding model, but also risk mitigation on it, just because of the risk there that comes with housing prisoners. And we don't want to be taking any more risk than is necessary, because obviously there's financial issues with that if a prisoner's hurt or dies in our custody. The West Kootenay Integrated Response, the Integrated Road Safety Unit. So there's a sergeant and 3 constable positions there that NPD sends officers to when we have enough. Currently, we only have 1 officer working over there just because of the staffing issues. But we're hoping to get back, once we get our numbers back. It's a good program that benefits the region and the road users. Plus, it's something different that we can rotate officers through and get some experience and some time away from frontline policing, general duty frontline policing. Bylaw enforcement, reserve officers who are volunteer citizens, and the restorative justice program.
Chief, how many people do we have at URSU right now? I understand that we only have 1 officer there currently.
1, yeah.
Okay. Not the 4 that.
No, and at one point, I think we had 5 positions, so we could send over up to 5, but obviously the priority is the department here first, and then as we can release officers, we will start sending them back for a tour there. Department review and action, more collaboration with our community partners, greater use of volunteers and civilians for non-policing duties, engaging CSOs and more reserve officers, use of local resources for training, bringing in trainers, cross-training with other agencies, increased internal training capacities and efficiencies in technologies. So again, just some ways that we're trying to reduce our costs. It's very expensive to send 1 officer down to Vancouver between flights, accommodations, per diems, and then sometimes paying for the training course. This way we can bring a trainer in, pay for 1 person's travel, and oftentimes train 5, 6, 7 people. We've had a couple of courses this year that I think were pretty successful. Cost us probably 20% of what it would have cost to send the same people that got trained down to training in, like I said, somewhere in the Lower Mainland.
Yeah.
The 2022 operating budget. Anybody want to come look at this later to see all the numbers, but police protection uses 19% of the city's overall budget. So that was for 2022. 2023, the policing actual budget was again at 19%. And I have the numbers, but basically for the last 10 years, so since 2012 or 2013, that's been pretty consistent. It's goes between about 18.5 to about 19.5, 19.75 of the city's overall budget. I think there was 1 year, a couple of years ago where it broke 20%, but the next year it was down to 18 some percent. So I'd say on average, we were pretty good at maintaining that steady 19% of the city's overall budget. And we don't have the pie chart for 2024 yet, but based on what we're asking, we're again in the high 19% based on the ask on the budget that we're putting forward. So in summary, one of the highest caseloads per officers in the province. So in summary, for the Nelson Police Department, we have the second highest call volume and charge approvals per capita in the province. The increasing crime severity, and in particular the violent crime severity index, increasing file complexity resulting in more person hours required per investigation, and the completion of the RTCC or disclosure packages. Moderate population growth. Nelson is still a desirable place to live and continues to attract people to the community. And on top of that, the daily surge population that we see coming in, that does definitely affect the calls and the services required of the department during the day. Fatigue and stress continue to contribute to injuries and off work time. Approximately 30% of the officers in the department are retirable in the 2024 calendar year and going forward, which that number's been improving. We've been hiring some more junior officers, and some people retiring or leaving in the last couple of years. The average age of the workforce is going down, because last year it was over 50% of the officers in the department were coming into retirement age. So that was a pretty big risk. So we've made some difference in that, but 30% of the department could all retire next year if they chose to. So that would not be a good thing. There's limited ability to free officers up for training and development opportunities, and continued risk of maintaining a modernized and highly skilled workforce. So this is crunch time. So calculating out what we need for officers to be operational, functioning, and healthy to cover off the minimum shift coverages for the department, which is 365 days a year and 24 hours a day. We're obviously open and working. We would need 15 officers. So that's 15 officers with nobody taking leave, nobody being off sick, nobody going on training or whatever. So that's our minimum number to operate. So with that, to maintain these minimums, we've calculated how many officers we have to cover if everybody took their leave. So that would be 3.3 officers. So we have to add that to that number now. Sick time for the last couple of years, calculated out, the average sick time results in 1.1 officers being required full-time to cover off all the sick time that the department has to cover. Mandatory training, along with some minimal other needed training, we need 0.7 officers, which I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's, we're talking like 1,600 hours of work time. So 0.7 of a full-time position is needed to cover off training requirements for the department. And then non-operational, which kind of lumps together a bunch of other things, a little hard to explain, but we get people that are injured, so they can come to work, but they're not operational. We've got people that are assigned different duties or reassigned admin duties that we've seen. Over the last couple of years, we've tried to go through, and it's been quite a number of people, but add all of those people up and how many hours that takes somebody off the operational front lines. That's the equivalent of 2 people. So on top of the 15 officers, we require basically 7 additional officers to ensure that we cover off those various absences. And I didn't include court in this. We haven't been too bad for the last couple of years at covering people who are off the court, but that's another draw that So that does take some people away. Okay. So based on those numbers, we would require 22 frontline officers to maintain the day-to-day operation at minimum levels of officers working and responding to calls. So just to clarify, frontline working officers includes constables, corporals, and sergeants. So that's not including the management team. So I think you can see the numbers. They're not really too big from back there. Ideally, we'd be looking at 6 constables on each platoon, so 3 day shift, 3 night shift, 2 corporals, so 1 on each shift as well, and then a sergeant to oversee that platoon. They'd be doing more of the administrative work for the platoon and oversight on the major investigations and that. The corporals would be there on both watches, so 2 watches in a platoon to make decisions and have that immediate oversight on serious files and things. And again, this is the number that ideally covers those shifts with the expectation that at any given time, you're probably gonna have 2 constables off on either holidays or training. You're always gonna have like 1 of the 3 NCOs off on training or something. So that's the number that we need to cover those other things off and maintain the 5 people that we need to be working on a platoon in a given day. Okay. Do you have the speaking notes on this one? So as per the previous slide, the department requires 4 additional officers from what we have right now to meet that minimum number we feel is to have an adequate, fully operational and efficient police department. If you recall, the current I'm drawing a blank. The current number of officers, anyways, the strength of the department is 21. Based on all those calculations, and including the management team, there should be 25 sworn police officers to reach the required staffing levels. In an effort to remain fiscally responsible and recognize again that this year it will be difficult to get where we need to. Sorry. So to get to where we need to is going to be difficult to do in this coming year. And again, I realize that's a big ask for the city and the taxpayers. So we're requesting that there be the staggered increase of over 3 years to get to those numbers of 4 officers. Sorry, I'm just reading off here. Sorry, when asked during the 2022 budget, so when we were at the 2022 discussion at City Council, we were asked by then Councilor Morrison what we thought we really needed at that time for numbers, and the number we provided was 24. So that was in 2022. So with the increases in demands, the severity index, the complexities of investigations and disclosure, I think it's reasonable and maintains that going to 25 or asking for 1 additional above that now based on all of these factors is not out of the ordinary, but we're requesting 24 and staggered over 3 years to this coming year to help catch up a bit. And we're asking for 2 this year because we continue to lag behind where staffing numbers should be because of several years where staffing did not keep up with the required levels and demands. So finally, the ask is for 2024 will be 2 additional constable positions with staggered start dates, and then likely, and I know they're for next year's discussions, looking at 1 officer starting mid 2025 and the 4th officer starting in probably early to mid 2026. So the last thing that I think is fairly impactful, or at least it was to me, was I gathered the numbers for the average overtime that's paid annually in the department and the average ADO and stat holiday. So ADOs are the days that the officers are credited leave because they work more than the 2,080 hours over the year because they're working 12-hour shifts throughout the year. So they're basically lieu days because they go over what the maximum number of hours they should be working are. So the overtime paid out for the last couple of years averaged $215,000. The ADOs and stat holidays that I got from the payroll department today, the last couple of years, the average was $61,000 that's paid out for a total of $276,000. So that's not included in the budget. That's taken from somewhere else and paid. So essentially what I'm saying is the budget itself doesn't account for these hours, but they're being paid anyways. That number there would more than cover the 2 new officers that we're requesting for this year, or for next year, sorry. Does not include the annual leave that the officers have also not been able to take and are carrying forward, and still a financial liability to the city and the department. The speaking notes on this one. So the amount of leave and overtime payout will be significantly reduced. In fact, I can guarantee that those ADO and stat hours, we can have people take them, 100% of them going forward. So we can reduce that number to 0. And I believe that we could reduce the number of overtime dollars paid out by at least 75%. So unfortunately, there's always incidents where you're still going to be required to call people on overtime. And events where like large protests or things where we have to have additional officers come in to manage the policing requirements for those types of events. But those are fairly few and far between. The vast majority of the overtime we're paying now is just covering day-to-day constable shifts because there isn't people to fill them. So as I said, that number could be significantly reduced by between the 2 numbers, probably 85 to 90% of that number could be reduced, and that would more than pay for the 2 constables that we're asking for.
I do have a question. I've been puzzling this in my head since we met last week. So we have been short-staffed, right? So how do I want to phrase this? We've been short-staffed. So this extra 276,000, wouldn't that have gone to wages for staff we didn't have?
Yes, but they go to staff at straight time, whereas the overtime is paid at double time.
Okay.
So really it's a 2-to-1 ratio. So if you got 4 people off work and they were all making just for argument's sake, saying $1,000 a day.
Yeah.
And we're not paying them, or there's a vacant position, that we would say $4,000. But then you've got to pay 4 people $2,000 a day to come in and fill those spots in. So you're paying $8,000, and the net cost to the department is $4,000 more than they would have normally spent or budgeted for.
Okay. Thank you.
So the budget request, as mentioned, we put in a request for a moderate increase in operational costs. So that's some of our investigations, transcriptions, and things that have been continuing to rise for the last couple of years, and there's not been any market increase in that part of the budget. Moderate increase to the training costs. Training costs continue to go up, but really what's causing us issues is the associated cost of training. Like for the most part, we send officers away for training. Hotel rooms have gone up probably 40 to 50% in overnight costs for the last couple of years. The cost of restaurants and food has gone up for officers traveling. So the courses themselves may not necessarily have increased that much in training, and I haven't looked into that. But again, it's the associated cost of the travel and sending officers to training that has increased significantly. We've asked for the ability to extend the CSO and keeping it in a pilot project phase for the next 6 months until we can sort out when and how much funding we're going to get for that outside of the department's budget. And finally, the request for 2 new officers with staggered start dates to join the department in 2024. So 2 new positions.
When you say moderate increase in training costs, does that include the JIVC costs if you have
Well,
recruits?
that's where the money would come out of. You know, again, that we sent 2 recruits this year, so that added almost $50,000 onto that. Again, to be somewhat fiscally responsible, but more effective reality is for us to hire exempt officers now, because, you know, we saved money on hiring recruits at one point because they were paid lower wages. And of course, you still had to pay them to be living down in Victoria and for the training costs. But it's still financially, we were better off at one point going with recruits. And it's nice to have somebody new. And we still want to, at some point throughout the next, 5 years, hire a certain number of recruits. But with the added cost, we can hire a fully trained exempt officer for basically the same amount of money, and they can start tomorrow. Like, they can be here and working. We're not waiting a year for them to finish training and then come here. And again, no fault of their own, they're just starting, but they don't have the experience. So you're paying the same amount of money for somebody you don't have for a year, and they don't have any experience when they start. So it almost doesn't make sense to hire recruits, other than the fact that there's shortages everywhere, and there's just not enough police officers go around. So at some point, we're going to have to still hire some recruits. But this is the sort of budget, the general budget, just for that has the sort of overarching numbers. Sorry, I can't really read them from here, but the budget request for this year is increasing almost $286,000 based on the start times and that for the 2 new constables. That's the significant driver for the increase, and plus a few other things. So just under a 6.5% increase. As I said, that number still keeps us in the 19% of the overall city budget. I believe when I figured out exactly, it was 19.7, so certainly in the high 19% of the budget. But again, the costs that have never been included in the budget that we can reduce, in my mind, make a significant dent in that number. And the overall cost of the city is somewhere between, and again, it's not predictable till the year happens and we see how much overtime, but I would say the net cost of the city is only going to be $30,000 to $50,000 increase. But as I said, we'll know better at the end of the year. Any questions? It's a little long, but
I have everybody staring at me because I'm the only person that's lost lead here almost. I have a question just in terms of officer additions, and that is once you get to 2026, like, when does the next ask come? Like, I'm just looking at given I know that we're a small department, but given our population and looking at our comparators who don't have any crime because of where they are, but I mean, that have larger populations. I mean, how do you project this going out even a few more years? How do we project this out 5 years, kind of in line with like the strategic plan in terms of looking at numbers of officers? Because I'm sort of thinking, I want to say Oak Bay has 24, yet they've got a population of like 20,000.
We have a CAPG newsletter came today, and one of the articles is the Victoria Police Board is pursuing a 10% budget increase in 2024. And then there was another one that I think was even higher. I can't remember which province it was in. So it's going to just keep going up because the cost of everything goes up.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's about officers. I want to know like the officer thing, like so. you kind of wanted to get to this officer amount. But then when you get there, is there something gonna be like, now we gotta scramble, we need 4 more?
I don't know if I'd say scramble it, but odds are we probably will need more by the time we get there because, you know, just like 2 years ago, we said the ideal number 2 years ago would have been 24. Well, we're at 21. So we're projecting
We're always behind.
Always
3
behind.
years out before we actually hit that 24 number. And that's 5 years past, 4 to 5 years past when we said we needed 24. So, you know, I'm trying to stay reasonable and take some cost saving measures, some workload saving measures, looking at where the trends of things are going. There's so many things that are going to influence that. Like, you know, there's additional housing that is being looked at in the city. So population is sort of the number one driver that people think about, but it probably has very little effect depending on what that population is. You know, again, whether you're going to have the care facilities to go around, safe injection sites or things like that, low-cost housing and things like that tend to, you know, like it or not, other places I've worked, majority of calls for service are generally towards the areas where there's lower cost housing and things. So again, it depends what the makeup of that community becomes. 3 to 5 years from now is going to have a significant influence on what the demand on police time and how many officers we need at that time.
I don't think we can expect it to be less complex.
No.
Or
Unless
that there will be
something
less official demands in terms of like the investigation standards. That's only going to increase.
Because those standards are set by the courts, essentially, courts and lawyers, and then the province enacts things to meet those standards. They're never going to give those back, so they're always going to continue to increase the standards, increase the complexity as we move forward. Where you know, the day is going to come where we're mandated to have body camera and dash cameras in the police cars. I think they're great things, but that also makes a significant amount of work on some staff in the department to manage all of that data now.
Well, and plus there's training on how to employ it, what to do with the data. No. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to predict to like what's going to happen in 5 years from now. But I was impressed with the presentation myself, just hearing the detail for the first time. Right? I think you've given a lot of thought, and I don't think it's making big demands. You know, you're being very reasonable. I just.
Yeah, it sort of wasn't super smooth with trying.
Oh no, but yeah, you know, I'm impressed. And then in the end, it's just a 6.45%, right? Like increase.
Yes.
It's not huge. It doesn't seem unreasonable.
I'm curious, Janice, when you're talking at the council level, is the expectation that the city's staffing is going to remain static, regardless of whether there's additional housing, population issues and things like that? In other words, what's the big picture thinking there about the next 5 years?
I think that, like always, the city is, there isn't an automatic expansion based on the size of the city. So in terms of actually more bodies, that's always, just like it is here to a certain extent, in flux. And that, you know, why are you needing new bodies? Do we just change around the chairs a little bit in terms of
Who does what?
who does what, and then we take where necessary things off the work plan, because we're very, you know, very judicious about trying to not increase
Automatically.
staffing. Yeah, that's not where we go to when we try to do budgets. And so, I mean, I guess I look at this and when I look at these numbers, I am a bit concerned. I'm a bit concerned as a taxpayer, I think. You know, it's easy to say 6.45 isn't that big a percentage increase. I mean, some might argue, well, you know, we had, at some point this year, we had 6.9 as a, you know, increase on inflation, but in 20, and it's more what happens in 2025 when I look at the one graph that you, piece of paper, is that, you know, that 6.45 is a 3% increase to the city tax roll. In terms of the whole global budget, yes, you're correct. You've always stayed in around, when I went back to look, it's always been about, you're about a fifth of the whole city budget, right? You're very close. General government there and policing are basically almost equal in terms of, so we run the city on the same budget that the police force runs on. When you look at that, that pie graph.
And I sort of was going to kind of point that out, that the two, so when you go from 2022, if you could just jump back one and you look at generally the numbers are around the same in 2022 as they were in 2023. The general government piece went up 1%, where we stayed the same. So the overall budget continues to grow. And I would say that for these numbers to continually more or less stay the same every year, their budgets are increasing more or less in step with us. Like otherwise that number would be going to 20 or 21 and the general government would be going from 18 to 17 and, you know, other people would have to go down for us to increase. So, you know, it's all kind of in lockstep, and I know they are fairly big numbers. And
because, so just to finish, so the issue here is that because you're looking at staggering in 2 officers in 2024 is what you don't really see the effect in the 2024 budget, where you see the effect of 2 officers that have been staggered in. And we've talked about this before, where we've said, let's bring somebody in mid-year, right? We even talked about this when we negotiate contracts. Let's see if we can have a mid-year raise versus a first of the year raise, because you know, because of the compounding effect. Really, the number here in 2025, when you then add in another officer, who you've got tagged here to be late in the year, so of course you're not paying a full thing there. But 2024 reflects that, having those 2 officers fully in the budget, and then you have an 8.26 increase in the budget, and closer to 4 and a bit % increase to the city budget in that year. So it's interesting. I mean, the preliminary budget numbers that we're looking at are probably close to, maybe there might be a 3% increase in city operation costs. So like you say, they might be in lockstep, but it's still like that 2025 budget is a bit.
It's a jump, but it's, I guess I go back to the point of, you know, we asked for 2 officers last year and eventually we agreed to take 1. So we cut 1 last year and now we're, you know, we originally started asking for 3 this year with 1 starting basically in December and agreed that we would push it into 25 early in the year and then have moved it to the summer and now to the fall. So it's, you know, at some point, because the numbers, the staffing wasn't increased when it should have been, you know, the previous 5 or 6 years, there's going to have to be 1 year where there's a little bit of pain and we jump up somewhere close to where we should be. And I'm saying we're still understaffed to where we should be for numbers. That number's going to hit us at one point. And if we just keep pushing it further down the road, it causes other problems. And at some point, I think the hit's going to be even bigger. So,
I think too, like you want to look at the health of the offices. And if you are understaffed, then everybody's overworked and, you know, so that's.
But you see a transition through into the overtime and stuff, and people being off. And we know people are we've got a couple officers that are gonna need surgery and they've been delaying it because we're short. They want to wait until our numbers are up, but then they're gonna be off, and that's that sort of non-operational piece that we don't have the people to cover off for people to go off for surgeries when they should be and things like that. So again,
we don't actually have enough bodies. We don't have enough bodies.
And it's, I'm not explaining it very well, I don't think, but I think the point I'm trying to make is those things cause us other costs that I think that aren't always projected in the budget or visible. And again, this number right there is one of those costs.
Yeah.
Can I jump in here, Chief?
Yeah.
Mary, you have to make a very valid question, like in regards to what our projections are. And, when you look at the projections from BC population stats, it says in 2029, the population for Nelson will be 12,500 people, right? So we have to at least get to that level where we're not falling behind and we have the personnel to provide the proper policing service. And that doesn't take into account the population we're serving outside of our jurisdiction that are coming to the city, which would be anywhere from an influx of 30 to 50%.
Who don't pay taxes.
Right. So it's totally understandable where you're coming from. But we have to look at it from a public safety perspective. Nationally, the average budget for police budget for protective services averages anywhere from 20 to 25% of the city's budget. So we're still well under that, 19%. It definitely is a cost. I think we are definitely, the chief said, we're playing catch up. We have to get the personnel here because right now our expenditures are a lot higher, but with the overtime and the annual leave. And it's not the fiscal responsibility, it's the burnout of the members. And that's what's the concerning factor for us.
That would be a concern for us as board members too.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, the thing about this budget that is not reflected in here is that overtime cost, right? Like for me, that's the game changer. It's like, do we want to, really the question is, do we want to pay it in overtime costs or we want to plan for it in a budget? Because we're already paying for it in overtime costs and it's not reflected in that. Right?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's missing actually in this budget that I would suggest that going forward, that you need to talk with Chris Jury about trying to look at some kind of line that goes in the budget that reflects overtime costs because it's not reflected here. So I can't see it anywhere.
The numbers don't actually show it.
To compare anything. So.
But they never put it in there. And that's the
But-
problem. So it's a hidden cost
Yeah.
that we could.
And if it's $250,000 every year for the last 5 years, that's a whack of money.
And we asked him when we met with Chris last week, we asked him if he could put that in there and it wasn't reflected in there because I guess it never has been, or there's never been a line item, so I don't know.
Yeah.
If he knew how to do it, but we asked the same
I'll ask,
question. Yeah, so we're comparing.
I mean,
apples to
because you don't have any year-over-year comparison when you don't have that in a budget. So.
apples. Right, exactly.
We do have the year-over-year numbers.
We know the number, but we don't have it reflected anywhere to look at where the cost overruns are and where the shortfalls are. So, and then I guess in the meantime, when I'm looking at the fact that, okay, we have 2 more bodies in terms of the CSOs that we're not sure how they're going to continue to be funded. We can hope that we can get some money. And then my understanding is that they are doing some sort of low level crime, like
Non-core functions, non-core policing.
Is that-
some of the work off the officers' plates?
So, is that in the interim helping any? Because those are 2 salaries that still have to get paid at some point, like when I look at that. And then the other thing would be, is I know there's been discussion about bylaw, and that's probably something that actually would need to be discussed in camera, but just about if there was some changes forthcoming in regards to that in terms of freeing up, again, more policing time. If we continue to take a little bit off the plate, does that help in any capacity?
It would be limited what we could use bylaw for, and there's a couple of issues that I see, and I'm not sure if this is in camera or out camera discussion, but they don't fall under the Police Act at the moment, and obviously we want to keep it that way, but if we start using them for even low-level police functions, we run the risk of Police Act complaints against them.
Right. Well, the other side of that question would be is if you weren't the supervisors of them, which I guess you are currently.
But the other piece is, like it or not, they're a revenue generating part of the city. You start using for other functions, you start lessening that revenue generation. My thought would be to keep them at the core function they were hired to do, enforcement and following up on the bylaws as they exist and where needed, giving tickets and fines for things. I guess we've had the discussion that, you know, for the amount of extra work and supervision and things the department does, we don't see a whole lot of funding or revenue being provided to us from them. So I guess that would be my discussion would be is I think some of the funding from bylaw more of it should come to the department to help cover operations and administration and supervision.
And then I had a question as I started looking at some other stuff when I was the budget in terms of as we're adding on more staff. Now I realize everybody needs to have a gun and a vest, but
And a desk,
and a desk.
and a parking spot.
Well, the parking spot, I don't know, the parking spot, we shouldn't talk about parking here because that's consumes enough of my time at City Hall. What are you doing for long-term in terms of, actually, I was thinking more of vehicles. If you start getting a 6-person, like is the expectation that 3 cruisers are gonna be out on, like in your platoon grouping, like, are you budgeting for more vehicles? Like, is that,
Can I answer?
Well,
like, I mean, like a big, that's a big ticket item.
my holes, but you know, we obviously at some point as staff grows, we will need additional vehicles.
Mhm.
But you know, the growth that we're seeing now and for the next probably couple of years isn't going to increase the number of people working at any given time. I mean, you got to remember they're spread over 4 watches, so hiring 4 more people only adds 1 person to a watch. So we have sufficient vehicles right now. Again, the problem is when we have bigger events and we call people in, sometimes we don't have enough vehicles or people have to double up. But this is probably where Roger's going to go is we've been working at prolonging the life of the existing fleet that we have. So if we get a replacement vehicle, we're trying to extend the vehicle that's replacing and keep it in the fleet for an extra year. So, you know, at some point, the cost of maintenance becomes
Right,
a
yeah,
challenge.
no, I understand that.
I think so far we've been doing pretty good at extending the lives of the vehicles that we have so that they can take up some of that extra slack.
Well,
No,
right.
if you wanted to answer the question and he
I
answered
think
it, so I
he's
was like,
answered it bang on, but I think what's happening is the fleet cycle is every 3 years. So we hang on to the vehicle another year based on the usage. So our fleet right now is 5 vehicles, 5 marked vehicles. We can accommodate the additional officers. And the same thing, the rotation is every 3 years. So based on that, if the vehicle lasts another year, we maintain the vehicle for another year. It's just low end maintenance costs. Take down the fleet, they maintain them for us.
just was like, okay, you add more people, everybody's probably gonna want to have a car to drive around in, so, you know, that's the, as I tell people, you want to move to Nelson, add in the, you know, $80,000 factor for the 4-wheel drive that you have to have, so I was thinking.
But I will also throw in there that if we get more people, we could probably afford to have a few more people doing foot patrol downtown and be out there.
Well, that's what I was thinking about when you're doing this, because what I'd really like to see at some point is like a shift schedule, and that, because if you're adding 1 extra person to each 12-hour rotation, like is it now 3 people in a car, or is it 2 people in cars and 1 person downtown, or what? I guess that's an operational question that I'm not supposed to be asking because I'm in the weeds.
Here, I'm gonna try to kind of fill in some of the gaps here in regards to, like, when we look at this right now, we're a response-oriented police department. We get a call, we take a call.
Yeah.
We're doing no proactive police work. We're not doing any type of major enforcement. You know, other major centers, you know, they're doing proactive initiatives, leveraging technology in regards to red light cameras, reducing speeds on 3rd Street. You know, we don't have the ability to do that at this point because we're basically, if we got a call, we're gonna take that call. So this allows us to wind up looking at proactive initiatives. That's very important as a core function of BC policing standards. So we have to look at that and provide that service to our community. If we don't, what we're gonna see as this community grows is you're gonna see an influx of criminality increase and your crime severity index is gonna increase. And we don't want that.
And I also just want to, the fact that's sort of getting missed is, you know, right now we have if everybody comes to work, we have 3 people on a watch. So over the next 3 years, we're hoping to add 4 people. So that's, now we got 4 people per watch. It's an increase of 1, but part of the idea, the argument behind that increase is so that somebody can have holidays and they'll be off. So we won't see this jump in extra people working. It's just now we're not going to be paying people to be working on overtime and saying you can't take your holidays. So now they can go take their holiday, they can go on a training course, and the net effect of people working isn't going to be
Reduce workforce burnout.
Everybody keeps looking at me like, I just,
You got all the
Yeah,
questions.
I'm the chair, but that, you know, I mean, I'm the one with all the questions. I mean, I guess my only thing would be is that you guys went, three of the 4 of you were at the meeting, you know, at the finance committee meeting. You know, in terms of whether or not there was any contemplation of whether or not there was other areas that you could reduce. And I mean, there's some things here when I go into the operations and I look at other things, hopefully some of these numbers that have been up should be back down, just because things that have happened are coming to an end. So I would see that some monies here should even out over time. And just when I look at this, it's just about whether or not there's any more way to smooth, and particularly that significant bump in 2025, which would probably mean looking at bringing in, you know, staggering these officers a little bit more.
So Janice,
Pain is the pain.
in the meeting, Chris Jury seemed to be happy with what we discussed and the rationale. And in fact, they even went back and rejigged the timing in 24 and 25 because there was initially a bigger jump between 24 and 25 in terms of the percentage. So, I mean, I think, you know, the city's finance officer is reasonably satisfied with what we're proposing. And he's looked at every single one of those numbers in detail.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think we're at version 4 of, you know, we had multiple meetings before we got to version 1 and we tweaked it 3 more times.
Yeah, I think you're at V3. This is V3.
Well, V3 was tweaked and he didn't tweak it to say V4 because we were at V3 at our finance meeting.
That's right.
This was tweaked again, so.
If I can also just speak to the budget committee meeting we had with Chris last week. You know, we asked a lot of questions. I felt like we had a very robust, fulsome discussion, you know, around things like, you know, the overtime budget not being included in here, for example. We went line by line to ask why there were increase in some things and if they were necessary and things like that. So, like, I know that all 3 of us who were at the meeting were satisfied at the end of it and feel very confident in recommending this, and don't take it lightly. It's a significant increase, and we believe that it's well justified as well.
So unless we have other specific questions, can I, as a member of the finance committee, move that we recommend that this be approved by the board for the chief to go forward and present to city council?
So the recommendation here on 8A is recommended the Nelson Police Board accept the provisional Nelson Police Department budget.
Now, I want to make sure everyone understands too, that the process, the way it is we'll be presenting this in November.
Yeah.
We still have until March to make adjustments if any adjustments are warranted. So it doesn't mean we'll stop considering and looking at it and reviewing and taking feedback and so on. But this is the provisional budget that I propose we recommend go forward.
And I'll second that.
It's moved and seconded. All those in favor? Okay, and that carries. So on to item 9. Thank you, Chief.
Sure. You want to switch back or?
I almost pulled the incident like we had at the
Oh,
dinner
when
the
you
other
were
night when
drinking
I,
my water the other
Yeah.
day.
I thought it was my lipstick on the glass.
As I had to point out, Chief, that's my lipstick.
Getting thirsty with a lot of talking.
So anyways, so I don't really have a chair's report, but I guess I should now that you brought that up, because I did report it last night at the meeting. The chief and I were at the Community Social Services Recognition Awards last week, which was week before? I go to so many of these things now. And anyways, it was a fantastic evening where the chief had been nominated by Tyler to win the award for the police, nominated him for an employer recognition award. I was there to get an award that was being given out to Public Works. Chief Librarian was there to get an award from the people that work in the library. This is the first time that all of those lovely adults that are part of our extensive neurodiverse community here in Nelson had a chance to get together since COVID. So it was really exciting to be there. And Tyler was almost in tears, and so was the chief. And they were getting their awards, I believe. Did you get a picture to post
I did, yes, I posted on social media.
on the social media for the Nelson page? It was really cool. Those are the kind of things that it's kind of nice to go to. When I'd had a bad day that day, that was the perfect thing I needed to end my day.
It was good enough. Give the Empire, what's the restaurant called? The Adventure Hotel.
Yeah.
They,
Louise.
yeah.
Well, we
they
were
do
in the
banquet
back room. We
but
were in the banquet. They did a great job. The food was
Awesome supper
excellent.
again.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah, it was awesome catering, and it was just so good to see all those people there and getting recognized for the businesses that have. In the city of Nelson, we have, I think, about 16 individuals that we hire in some capacity, so including library and police. And it's great.
Yeah.
So that's my report for that.
Congrats.
New business and late items. So attached is the 2024 meeting schedule. If there's a mover and a seconder, or in any case, it's been moved, the seconded. Any discussion? Is everybody okay with the fact that we are keeping it on Wednesdays at 4:30? And we'll see. I always look at this as that this has been published, but based on any changes, if you're gone in the spring, Sue, and then we have to look at new people coming on, we may have to contemplate some other schedule, but for now, we'll sally forth with what's on there. Perfect. Thank you. And then there was the forward calendar is there and a rough draft just for people to take a look at your leisure.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Yeah, I like that.
We even put on the police board calendar, the upcoming meetings for those that are members. Now, Sue, I did have one question. Are you still the BCAPC rep then?
Yes, I am.
So you'll be going to that, April. March.
No, I won't be involved in the convention next year, but there's a meeting November 17th that I'll attend, and then there's an in-person strategic planning session in January that I'm going to see if I can get down to Delta. If the weather doesn't cooperate, I'll just attend virtually. But then after that, once my term is ended, I have to appoint someone else. Lena is currently the alternate.
Oh, okay. I was just looking at this on the forward calendar. That's one of the things that I guess we never looked at is when will we do, just check in and make sure everybody's got the right appointments. It seemed to me that we did that. I think it was like the second meeting I had as the chair, like.
They actually said when in one of the just casual discussions that we had before the interviews, they said they're trying to reorganize it so that everybody renews at the same time instead of it being staggered. So what they're trying to get to is having everybody renew in June. But I don't know how long it'll take them to do shorter appointments to get to a June date and then a year from then.
That would make sense, so that it would be in June or the July meeting that we'd look at committee appointments, but I'm just wondering if, I guess, in the transition while we wait, then I guess Lena would just carry on and maybe have some overlap.
Well, it's up to you guys. It depends on who joins also.
I'm happy to take it on as the permanent person.
But like as we wait, you could be gone and we might be without anybody, so. Okay, and then we had 10C, that was just some correspondence regarding the costs.
Going up, of course.
Yeah, of course. Does anything ever go down? That's it. So recommendation that the regular meeting of the 2023 Nelson Police Board be adjourned and the next meeting be held on December the 13th at 4:30. While we transition over to the in-camera, thank you. Seconded, and everyone's in favor? Okay.
Quick bio break.
Yeah, bio break, and then just a reminder that